Maybe I should turn on my light here.
Okay, looks like we are good. So let's get this party started. Hi, everybody. Happy Wine Wednesday. Hope that you have had a fabulous week, better than mine. I think I say that every week anymore. No good. But sorry if you're hearing the whirling in the background. We're doing some laundry. Apologies, we're a few minutes late. I just had a wonderful experience. Not really. I'm terrified of bugs, like phobia, like I act like a little girl screeching and running away. And my daughter, my family went to visit my brother's new property. It's this beautiful area in Brown County, woods. It's really awesome hiking, really great place. But my daughter apparently brought home a friend. Look, I'm all itchy still. She had a tick, and I had to remove my first tick, and I'm like still freaking out. So apologies, we're running a little late, but I hope your days and week has gone better than mine. Hope your seahorses are doing fabulously. I have something to announce, but I want to say hello to everybody who's here already. Hey, Ray. Hey, Cheryl. Hey, Holly. Hey, everybody in the audience. Everybody doing good?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm gonna tell you what I was gonna share because I know I have a question for Holly, a question for Cheryl, and a question for Ray. But Pinot Noir, by the way, always. But I got in the mail today, and this is a question for all of you guys. Oh, my coins are going everywhere. I gotta fix that. Anyways, the first question is, do you guys use carbon in seahorse tanks? Have you ever?
I have.
Yes. That reminds me I
I
need
don't
to
make
change
a.
mine.
I don't want to make a habit of it because it's expensive
Oh, sure.
in Canada here. Anyway, carbon is expensive. But that stuff that you were showing, it's not something I would have considered.
Mm-hmm.
Surface area is much better if you have small granules.
Well,
When you have larger pieces like that, you don't have as much surface area.
gotcha. And it's a little staticky. Got somebody in the audience. Let me know if it's sounding staticky to you guys. Just let me know if it is. But anyways, it might just be these wonderful little Harkins Aquatics. You kill bugs for a living. I need you to come on over, buddy, and let me know if they sound staticky. Because still playing with the new headset. But no, and Ray, what Ray's talking about that I showed is Aquachar right there, right? And it's not fine granules, as you can see, whoops. But I ordered this type specifically. There's also flakes and I think another different kind. And of course I got cool stickers and all the good stuff. But I'm not even going to bother trying to explain Aquachar because it's kind of deep. Like it's not just carbon. It has, and Dan explained to me when I was asking him about it, that anything can serve as a biological media, to keep good bacteria. Any surface area can do that. But as Ray was saying, the finer would be better.
It's the
Anyways,
surface area you need for the activity.
right. So, but what I'm trying to say is there's all these added benefits to Aquachar, and if I try to explain them, it's not going to make any sense. Y'all know me. So, what I've done is I've asked the owner of Aquachar to come on next week's show. So, next week we'll have him here to answer all of our questions. So, don't ask me any yet. I just wanted to tell you all I had it, and I was excited, and I'm going to try it out this week. And so that way, next week when he's on the show, obviously we can all ask him questions, but if I've had anything, that I'm sure something will happen, and they'll be like, well, did I do this right, or did I clean? So we're just letting you know I got it. I'm excited. I'm trying it out, and he'll be here next week. Hey, Sam, how are you? But I'm curious if anybody in the audience has used our Aquachar, because like I said, I don't want to go through explaining the benefits improperly, but apparently it's like top secret, really cool stuff that's somehow very different than normal carbon. So look forward to next week and hearing more about that.
Who put
But
you on to it?
actually, and that's another thank you, Ray. Um, we recently did the Women in Reefing video with ladies who keep Pico and vase tanks. And I was asking, we were just talking about everything, and every single one of them were using Aquachar. And I was like, oh, wow. And Patty, her Nanos Reefs, she also told me about it. So I figured the guy reached out to me and I figured I'll give it a shot. I'll find out. And especially, like I said, I've never used carbon in a seahorse tank. So when Patty originally asked me about it, I was like, I just don't use carbon. I never saw a need for it. But once I learned all the additional benefits, I was like, okay, I got to try this. I got to let you know because there's like serious benefits, but he'll explain next
Well,
week.
they're claimed benefits.
Well,
Has anybody ever done lab testing to back it up? I mean, someone that's not connected with the company.
I don't know. We'll have to ask him
That was
that.
the good thing about Randy Holmes Farley when he was on Reef Central. Well, now he's on R2R, but he's only on part-time because he's working again.
Yep.
But that was the good thing about him because through him, a lot of things many years ago got tested for.
Yeah.
Like just to pick one thing, for example, marine snow.
Mm-hmm. You're
When
not
we
wrong.
tested that, it was more than 99% water.
Jeez. Right. Well, and you're not wrong, Ray. And I'm not out here saying anything yet because I haven't tried it. And so that's while I don't know
can't
if
say that it isn't any good because I hadn't even heard of it until you
sure,
mentioned it.
sure,
But
absolutely.
I'm always suspect about anything that somebody comes out and starts making claims. I've spent too many years in the saltwater hobby and had too many letdowns.
Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, you're not wrong, but that's why, we can ask him all these questions next week. And I will definitely give you guys my feedback. I'm not a scientist. I can't actually test anything, but I'll definitely let you know if I see a difference. And once he describes the benefits, I'll tell you if I see them. That's all. That's what we can do. But I think it's a cool product, and everybody I know keeps telling me about it. So thought we definitely needed to learn more and share it, and I'll be testing it. And Sam said,
Well,
I know people in freshwater love it. Go ahead, Cheryl.
yeah. I use activated carbon. I have for years. And about a year ago, a friend of mine was breaking down his tank, hardcore reefer, and he had almost a full bucket of the bulk reef supply activated carbon. And so I switched to that because he let me have it for a good price. And I must say, the tanks definitely are definitely more stable than they used to be with the cheaper carbon.
Gotcha.
And I have never tried what you're talking about. I'm always into experimenting.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it would be fun to take one of my tanks and experiment with it.
Need to know what kind of a cost benefit ratio there is.
Sure. Well, we can ask him all those questions next week, guys. I probably shouldn't have even said anything, but
Well,
because I
something
can't.
that's individual.
Right. I
He
just.
can't tell you whether it's the cost benefit ratio for you is good because he doesn't know
Right.
what costs you're willing to go to and accept what benefits.
Right. I guess I should have said next week I will be able to better answer, maybe not fully, but better answer that question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna test it and he's gonna come on and share it and I'm excited for it. And I mean he really explained it well to me, but I just don't wanna go through it because I would say it wrong and that's the whole point to bring him on so he can explain it. So anyways, and with carbon, the one thing that I always did kind of steer clear of it is because so many brands would leach back out if you didn't replace it in time. Have you guys ever? Yeah. So apparently this does not. Again, I'll be testing. I'm not making a claim, Ray. I'm just telling you what it says. And then I will let you know how that goes for
You
me.
putting it on a Seahorse tank or what?
Yep, the all-in-one tank,
On
which
the
has
new one?
Yep.
Well,
Tested.
you're not going to find much in a week's time. You're not going to know much putting it on a new tank.
Well, the other reason is, or the other thing I should say is that it's like a full bag, which should last you quite a while. So what I'm going to do is instead of having it last a while, I'm going to use it on the 65 gallon also. So I'm putting it on the new tank just for, videos and pictures and pretties, but I'm putting it on the old tank that's a freaking mess to see how it does there too. See if it has any real benefits in that tank. If it all of a sudden in a day looks amazing, oh, I'll tell you guys. Not that I expect that, but anyways, just fun and getting some more people on the show to share what they got going on. So excited for that, and we'll find out all of that next week. But Miss Holly, jumping to you, I know you were talking before the show, and as I said, I apologize. I've not been very active on social media at all for the past couple weeks. But what's going on with Sandy?
Well, started out about a week or so ago, his tail got a big white bump on it
Right.
and what looked just like a whitehead pimple. He actually had like three little bumps. And that is how he started out when he had his bacterial infection. I don't know if you remember, he had internal gas bubble disease right around the beginning of the year.
Right.
And that's how it started out, was his tail. So I started treating it with Alloderm twice a day. And his tail started getting better. We were seeing improvement. Cheryl was helping me watch it, in videos and pictures and so on. But his behavior, I kind of noticed he was starting to show the signs of the internal bacterial infection again.
Mm.
And his
And
color changed.
yeah, he was turning kind of dark in the middle. He was kind of losing his appetite and just he was acting the same way he had that first time around. So I decided to be proactive, with Cheryl's advice too. We agreed. So he went into the Furan 2 treatment, and today is his fifth day of that,
Mm.
and also added Sulfaplex today too, just to try to speed up the tail. But he's looking better. Cheryl agrees, but he's hanging in. He's not happy in there, but he's mellow. He's not freaking out. So I think he'll be okay afterwards.
He's upright. He's looking around. He's actively moving his head around and observing what's going on. I mean, he's totally with the program at this point, but he's not freaking out at all, which is
Right.
exactly what you want for him at this point.
And triple and sulfaplex, that's like the equivalent to triple sulfa, right? Or no?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And so basically just playing it by ear at this point, huh? How long does he have to be in the sulfaplex?
I don't know about the Sulfablex. It's an every 3 day treatment. I think until improvement is my understanding from reading it. But I know the Furan too, he has to stay in for 10 days.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well,
And
poor
we'll
Sandy.
have to reassess after 10 days. Because, like I've already explained to you, Holly, sometimes with tail bubbles, you can go 21 days and they're still going to have discoloration and that kind of stuff. And there comes a point where you have to say, okay, I've done everything I can. And I've seen seahorses go back into a main tank still with some discoloration on their tails and turn around within a week.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that we're going to have to kind of play it
Now
by
we
ear.
need to see what we think at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've told the story before, but I had one male that just kept getting it. I kept treating him, kept medicating, hospital tank, everything you're talking about, and it would work every time. But then he'd get it again, and then when I finally got to that, okay, I give up point, he just got better on his own, and I never had a problem again. It was nuts. It was really crazy.
Wow.
Sometimes the
Tails
immune
are
system,
tails are a pain.
yep. And uh, and this is different than like the actual tail bubbles that are, or is this the same as the tail bubbles you would treat with Diamox?
This is different. Diamax, you're treating, it's a carbonic anhydrase inhibitor. So it's designed to reduce the inflammation from fluid buildup within the seahorse, as opposed to the antibiotics, which are actually treating a actual bacterial infection versus just a buildup of fluid. I think one of the more interesting ones I saw was a research institute in Malaysia, and they'd gotten in over 300 captive bred seahorses, and all of a sudden they started dying within a couple of days. And they finally sent me a video under an electron microscope, and I could see the ciliates everywhere, and they kept
Mm,
dipping them, thinking that the ciliates were causing the problem. The seahorses had tail rot from the stress of the environment. And what happened then is the ciliates were coming in, proliferating on the necrotic tissue on the tail.
Mm.
Within 3 days after starting the antibiotics, they hadn't lost any more,
Turn that off,
and the
please.
tail healed.
Sorry.
Now, don't they say you can't treat for like celiac and things the same time you're treating for bacteria, right? Isn't that a no-no?
The thing is, when you're treating for ciliacs, you're going to be using something like
Formalin?
fresh water
Freshwater dips or formalin,
or
right?
formalin, that kind of stuff. And the thing is, you've got to always ask yourself, if I add something else to this tank, am I going to make the problem worse?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
but the thing is, what they did is when I had them go in with an antibiotic therapy, and that cleared the tails up, and the ciliates died because the ciliates didn't have anything more to eat, which was
Mm.
great.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And all of these things, it's so hard to give a straight answer. I mean, like, even with freshwater dips, that's the first line of defense most people will use if they're not sure what's going on. But then if it's bacterial, that can be a bad thing. So it's just, or if they've opened wounds, anywhere that you don't see it, it can be a bad thing. So
Well,
it's hard
I,
to,
Yeah.
yeah, I've got a lady I'm working with right now. The seahorses were really went downhill fast. She just got them in, and they all of a sudden started cratering on her.
mm,
She did a freshwater dip. They reacted somewhat, but not much. Now we've got them on antibiotics, and all of a sudden they're coming back to life.
mm.
So the celiacs are sometimes a secondary problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I get your point. You're not, yeah, absolutely. And Sam mentioned, it's been so long, Sam. We miss your parrot. But she mentioned triple sulfa is a 10-day treatment too. Right. So you guys are doing the full 10 days and then look and see what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then Harkins Aquatics said, does garlic work as a food enticement like it does for fish?
I
Nope.
have never used it, so I cannot personally say. I have heard from others that it does work, but I have no knowledge of using that.
I have, and I say it works. And but I don't like. I'm not. I don't use the over-the-counter garlic. I got the Allison, which is supposedly like somehow they figured out how to take whatever that really great thing is that happens when you first break the garlic versus if it's already all crushed up or in a
Hmm.
a fluid or whatever. Um, Whatever that great wonderful thing is, I wish Dan was here. He could tell you. He's probably working hard. But anyways, I'm giving the very very low maintenance here explanation. Whatever that is, they figured it out, and that's what Allison is. It contains that really great thing. So, and I don't. Maybe the over the counter products have that too. I just don't know. So I'm definitely not a supporter of garlic as a cure for anything. But I've had seahorses that were not eating, that when I put Allison on the food, they all of a sudden would
Well,
eat.
and Allison you can buy over the counter at Amazon or at health food stores and places
Right.
like that. And the Alloderm is, if I recall correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, Holly, the Alloderm itself is actually the gel rather than just the plain liquid. Is that correct?
Yeah, it comes in Alloderm, and the other one is Alamax or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that, and that's the liquid version. But the key ingredient is the allicin, is that compound that's found in garlic. And I did notice that because I was treating Sandy's tail with it. It does smell really strong like garlic.
In
Yep.
Canada, you can't get liquid or gel.
Yeah.
You
You can
can't
only
get
get
that now.
capsules.
Oh
What'd you say,
wow.
Ray?
Sorry?
What did you say? I missed it.
You can't get the Ellison here in Canada in a
Ah,
liquid or gel.
that sucks.
I even wrote to them. I asked them how I can get it here, and like when I bought it, I had to buy the capsules. That was the
Right.
only thing they had. And
Man,
when I wrote to the company, they said it's not available in Canada. No explanation or anything, just that.
that
Well,
sucks.
it's like the UK and Australia and a lot of countries have some really strict limits on a lot of this stuff.
Mhm.
Mm. And Dan is, like I said, probably just super busy, but he did comment. It does work. That's his comment. And Dan, if you're still seeing this and you can reply, if you're able, would love to know your thoughts on Heather's comment, which was she has used garlic to help wean a wild caught to frozen. It worked, but I think long term isn't good for them. And I've heard something about that too. I don't have any information to share about it, but I've heard that long term, garlic getting into their system through food can be. And Dan said agree with Heather, but I need to know why, Dan. No, but apparently yes, it's bad long term. But to get a seahorse eating, whether it be a new seahorse, hopefully not wild caught, but something like that. Or I wonder, could it even be used for fry, like stubborn fry that are eating? Oh yeah, nobody knows because Cheryl doesn't use
No.
it. Okay, all right. I've never done that, but I'm curious. Let's see if Dan comments. But anyways, so yeah, but you're already using it as an adhesive, right, Holly? You're putting it
Yeah,
on the tail.
I was using it just, for the antibacterial properties on his tail. And it did help, but yeah, I think he has some other stuff going on. So,
Well, it also has some anti-inflammatory. It helps reduce swelling also. Uh, and his tail definitely improved with that, but he needed a jump start.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Sam said import laws suck. Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah. I wish Marina and Chris were here. They could give a shout out about that. Speaking of which, we need to get back with them, find out what's going on with zebras and cool stuff like that. But I'm jumping around. Anyways, Miss Cheryl. Well, Holly, my well wishes, crossed fingers, all that good stuff for Sandy, and please keep us updated. I'm sorry if I don't see it on media, but definitely let us know every Wednesday. Give us an update. So.
sure thing.
And Miss Cheryl, anything new with your newest?
Well, I've got the one mail that came in about a month and a half ago after 7 days in shipping.
Mm-hmm.
One one of those males has decided that he's in love with the female that came in less than a week ago.
Ah, well, love at first
And
bite.
they're hitching together, they're holding tails, they're swimming together, and I'm laughing because he's like, guys, you just met.
They don't care.
They're quick.
Yeah, they're not wasting any time. So, and I know some of the other people that have gotten seahorses recently that have already either have gotten fry or have very pregnant males. So
Mm.
I shouldn't be surprised.
Sure, you're gonna have little frylets soon. So, and remind me, Cheryl, because I'm forgetful. But you got the first batch that you got. What was the name of those? Hey, Salty. What was their title? The first batch of seahorses that got in.
Those were two pairs of of yellow sunbursts.
Okay.
And the two smaller females that came in with that shipment, it's hard to say right now, but they seem to love to turn more orange.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
but that was the one that they spent 7 days in transit. Thank you to our U.S. shipping company. And it was one of those things where when the box arrived, I felt it. It was still cool.
Right.
There was no damage to the box. And I said to myself, I'm going to give these guys a shot in my tank.
Yeah.
And they were a little stressed the first few hours, but it didn't take them long to figure out that they were starving.
Love it. Love it. But and then the second pair, were they the same the yellows or the
No,
sunburst?
these were the oranges.
Okay.
But the one female who's in love with the yellow male right now, she decided to go bright lemon yellow.
Oh my gosh.
So
So the
we'll see
yellow
what
ones
happens.
turned orange, the females, and then the new females turned yellow. What the heck?
Don't ask me. It's
Right.
one of those things that they tell you, give them low lighting, and they have some very specific instructions if you want them to maintain their colors. Give them pitches that are yellow and orange and red, this kind of stuff. And I know several people have said, well, they were yellow or they were orange when they came in, and in my tank they turned dark. Well, it's
Right.
a combination of lighting and the color of your what you've got in there for hitches,
Sure.
and that seems to make a big difference.
And aren't you still experimenting with vibrance now? Isn't that what you're?
I am. I'm waiting. I've got one pair that's. We'll see how it goes. The thing is, tiger tails, they grow much more slowly than erectus. Uh, they do. There's erectus time, which is gobble down the food and get on with the courtship. Then there's combs time, which is I'll get over to the feeding station here and I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, and I can spend an hour here eating. Yeah, they have very different personalities. So,
Sure.
and yeah, they're
Sir,
different.
are you using the vibrance in all of the tanks or just the new tank?
I'm using them on all of them. I'm experimenting at this
Gotcha.
point.
But you're just soaking the food. You're not like that. That's what you're doing.
Right. Well,
Okay.
I've got fibers one and fibers two, and I'm rotating them through because you're supposed to use vibrant one like 2 to 3 times a week, and the vibrants two the rest of the time. And I'm just watching to see what it does.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and we're interested to hear what you think at the end of your experiments.
I think what I'm really intrigued by is how it impacts fry if when you enrich the baby brine trip with it.
Mm, yeah, good.
I'm really going to be intrigued by that.
So I'm curious, Cheryl, because we talk so much, I don't think I really have ever asked. So how many different seahorses and tanks do you currently have? Like, do you have did you put the new ones with old ones? And what do you have the combs? How many do you
Well,
have?
I have my combs, which are at the opposite end of the house. The combs will never go near erectus or anything else, pretty much. Uh, and then I had the ones that came in from basically. I don't mind mixing some if they're from the same source in a short time frame,
Right.
which is what I ended up doing with the recent arrivals. However, they are not going into the same tanks with any of the seahorses I got from anybody else.
Gotcha.
So I'm just the thing is with the combs is we know over the years that they were carriers of urinema, and in theory they should have been cleared up. But that's like saying rectus can never carry vibrio. Don't
Right.
want to find it if you're wrong.
I have one more question for you, but Salty Reef, I just saw your comment and big frown for me. But hopefully, I really hope everything's okay with you. Touch base with me on the side. Um, let me know more what's going on. But okay, so Cheryl, so with the combs, how many do you have?
I have six.
Wow. And what's their? I know we've talked before, but I'm just curious because I can't think of it right now. What's their tank look like? How big is it and stuff?
They're in a 58 gallon with a 29-gallon sump,
Nice.
uh, and it's 36 by 18 wide by 20 tall. One thing that the combs you don't really worry as much about height because in many instances they will complete egg transfers while hitched.
Wow. How cool.
Remember, yeah, they're from a different part of the world, and their behaviors they're considered one of the few potential true reef-dwelling species.
Hmm.
And I have actually gone in as an experiment and put a variety of soft corals in a tank with combs. Erectus will hitch them. Erectus will hitch to anything. They don't care.
Hmm.
Combs will not go near even soft corals.
Wow. So
So
that like if they were easier to keep, and people were willing to keep them alone, that'd be a good for the people that want to do a reef seahorse tank. It might work.
yeah, I wouldn't necessarily go in with a full-blown reef with acros and some of that, but to look, I mean, obviously, gorgs, leathers, a lot. You still have a lot of options with them, and they don't hitch to the gorgs since they won't hitch to them. They're not going to wear off the flesh and kill them like happens with some.
Right. Right.
So, but that's down the road.
Sure. And then so with and then we walk to the other side of the house. And then do you have multiple tanks or just two or and how many seahorses?
I have 13 tanks.
Oh my God.
You did not hear that from me. I have
I knew it.
four of them are nursery tubs,
Hmm.
and some of them right now I tend to. It's like right now I'm gearing up because I'm assuming that I'm going to have fry, so I'm setting up all my nurseries, scrubbing them, and I plan ahead because I break it every time I switch something. I break the entire system down.
Hmm.
So right now I'm in the process of breaking down nurseries. But my favorite tanks are my oceanic, the old 58-gallon oceanic tanks,
Hmm.
and I've got a DSA 65 that was made by the same group of people, and those are some of my favorite tanks. As big as some of these erectus are going to get, they're probably going to go into the 65.
Gotcha.
That's the
And
plan anyway.
so, but aside from the combs on that side, and then the crazy nursery tanks, and then 65 and the bigger tanks on this side, all this side is erectus. They might be like sunburst, but they're erectus, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Or okay, gotcha.
Well, the thing is too, when you're breeding, you've not only got to have adult tanks,
Yeah.
you've got to have nurseries, you've got to have grow out tanks, and you have to have enough grow out tanks to hold two, 300 bouncing medium sized seahorses. And so I tend to I plan up ahead and impatient.
But and I love your success story though too, because you've been doing this a long time and you know what's up and you share it with all of us. And the bottom line is, I remember when I decided I wanted to try to breed, the few people that I reached out to, not you guys. This is before I was, friends with all of you, but the few people that I did reach out to. In fact, I think that Pete was one of them. Shh. But anyways, they told me, my question to them was, okay, I've got the nursery figured out, so I've got the breeding pair separated even. I've got the nursery set up, and then I always fail when they get to a certain point in the nursery. And I feel like I kept telling them, I feel like maybe once they get so big and they start eating frozen, they really need more space or something. Because I didn't know at that point. I mean, I knew they did, but I didn't know what to do. And they were like, you know, give up. You're not going to be able to do it. And I was like, yes, you can. And now I know people who do all the dang time. It's yeah. Anyways, didn't mean to get negative, but I just remember them saying that. But it's smart to be prepared. And yeah, starting out trying to breed without having a plan for when they get big enough and you want to grow them out is, yeah,
Guilty,
right.
guilty. That's
We
but
all are.
yeah, and it's like now one of the other things I've got to do is I've got to get some of my systems set up because I want to do a thing this time around and see what happens if all my erectus are raised on copepods rather than baby brine shrimp.
Oh,
See if I can get. I would anticipate a more rapid growth rate and a much stronger development much earlier with that. So I've got to get all my copepod stuff going.
but you'd have to
And
have a poop ton of
That's a lot
copepods,
of
right?
I'm
copepods.
sorry.
I,
I
s-
said that's a lot of copepods.
yeah.
Well, the
Wouldn't you
thing is,
have,
depending on the species, some of them are really easy to grow
right.
and reproduce very
Yeah.
rapidly.
I just know that
And
we've heard from Dan before, that it's like a grain of rice. So while they are more nutritious, not a grain of rice, but to have enough of them, I mean, you could probably pull it off. I don't think I could. You're gonna have to really grow some pods.
well, this is why I have some 20-gallon tanks also that I don't use for anything but pods
Well, that's gonna
because
be
it's
really
one of those
cool to
things.
find out if it works.
Well, the thing is, I have to do them for the combs because their fry are too small to eat newly hatched baby brine shrimp.
Uh,
So I have to do it for the combs anyway. So heck, throw some in with the erectus.
yeah, let us know how it goes because the only way we figure things out is when people try things and test it and figure it out. So for sure, I'm
Well,
curious to know. I've never, like
yeah.
somebody like me probably, like I said, couldn't pull it off because I don't like growing the pods. But if you're willing to,
What's
Well, the thing is,
Dan mean
Ones
by
that
knock
make
knock?
it were on
oh,
copepods.
he's jumping in. That's
well,
what that
the thing
means.
is, I mean, I'd like the Apocyclops panamensis because they reproduce so fast. The adults are almost exactly the same size as newly hatched brine shrimp. So they're good for, and the nepali, of course, are much smaller, so they're great for combs, little tiny combs fry. And they just, and you don't have to feed them live Fido. They will do just fine and reproduce on Fido paste. So you
Sure.
don't have
Chad talks about them all the time. April Cyclops panamensis are the bomb.
Mhm.
So it is much easier. Hey Dan, what do you think about that experiment? And welcome.
What's the experiment?
She's gonna try to raise a rectus fry on copepods.
They'll grow slower.
Oh,
They grow slower
Yes.
than on
even if
trace.
she gives them like a lot.
Uh,
Well, here's the problem: is I think the analogy you used a moment ago was one of mine
Yes.
about the rice, and the way I attribute it is that it's like you and I eating rice one grain at a time. When you compare the mass of a copepod to the mass of an artemia, it takes that many more of them to equal one artemia. And if you sit there and watch the fry eat, they'll eat 1 to 2 artemia knops per minute.
hmm
So how many bites will they take per minute of the copepods?
Well, the
Now,
thing
I,
is, Dan, the species I'm wanting to work with at maturity, they're virtually identical in size to baby brine shrimp.
And
okay,
aren't they more
well,
nutritious? Sorry, go ahead.
if they're larger, then yeah, that could work out. My experience in using plankton, and that's collected plankton, which is a variety of different organisms, they grew slower than they did with the artemia.
Because
Huh.
of the smaller size.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Well, I'm
Now, that's
curious
not to say that they're not nutritious enough, but the two problems that you have is one, the mass, and two is having enough of them.
Right.
Calculate it out. If they only eat one per minute, that's 60. Um, that's 60 an hour times 24 hours,
Right?
and then times how many fry you have. The numbers become wicked stupid quick.
Yeah, it depends, I think, on how prolific the species are that you're working with, and also how basic their size.
Yep.
so
It can
maybe
be
not for
done.
an
I mean, if you look at how Todd Gardner was raising the northern erectus up in New York, he was using copepods only. But
hmm,
the difference that I found is that I expect about an inch per month in growth size when
Right?
I'm using Artemia, and I find that I don't get close to that when I'm using other organisms.
hmm.
Interesting. But I'm
Well,
sure it had to do with size and the population density.
Yeah, well, remember too, if they're growing that quickly, it
Yeah.
doesn't take long before
Well,
they're really, you
they're
know,
gonna outgrow them because they're gonna outgrow newly hatched brine shrimp or some of the adult copepods probably within 2 weeks.
and also when you consider the size and trying to compare them to Artemia knops, are you comparing newly hatched or are you comparing, you know, second or third stage? Because typically when I'm feeding erectus are usually about third stage knops. These aren't
Right.
newly hatched at all.
Well, like the Apanamensis pods, the adults are almost exactly the same size as well, probably in star three, uh, brine
Well,
shrimp.
well, Instar 3 should be somewhere around 600.
Six 70 microns, is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think it's 670. That's the size of the mesh I was using, but I think it's over 600 microns.
Yeah, and see, these copepods at maturity are right about that size.
well, if anybody can do it, it's you, Cheryl, and I'm curious to see how it comes out. And
Right.
as you said,
It's an experiment.
well,
If
and
you
as you said, you're doing it anyways,
if you got them and can do it, do it.
right? And
If
you
I
have
can
to.
grow enough fast enough, I'll do
The
it.
closest I came to that was before my last batch that I ever raised. I ordered freeze-dried copepods from Brine Shrimp Direct.
Hmm,
I got a bag like you wouldn't believe, um, and I fed them along with the brine shrimp. I didn't feed them separate. And at first, they weren't even interested
Right.
in
Wow.
the freeze-dried copepods. And I don't remember now because it's been a while how long it was, but I'm guessing a week to 10 days before they got onto it to any great extent. But I never tried it just with the freeze-dried copepods, but I just figured I wanted to try it just to see it would make things different for them having a variety of food instead of just the brine shrimp at that stage.
Really? Yeah.
I would think it would help their growth rate if you could give them a broader selection of foods.
But as
But
I
that's
say, I only did it for that last batch that I had, and so I really don't have anything to
yeah.
be able to say that it was a good thing to do or a bad thing to do.
Sure.
Well, I'm
Hey,
just curious
hey,
because
real quick. I just want, hi, Patty. I see you there. Thanks for jumping in. Definitely come next week even if you want to jump in the Zoom because Aquachar's coming. And we were talking about it earlier and had a bunch of questions, but we're waiting for him next week. All right, done interrupting. Go ahead, Cheryl. Sorry.
well, I'm just thinking. Normally, when I have a rectus, I expect them to just about double in size in the first week, and then double in size again in the second week, which means at that point they're going to rapidly outgrow. They rapidly outgrow their food, and I'm going 4 and 5 days until enrichment on the brine shrimp by that point. So again, by this point, I've lost a couple cods because I've already maxed out how much I can use, I mean, how big they are.
My first fry that survived, I started them out on copepods,
Hmm.
actually, because I was raising copepods so that I'd be prepared in case I had fry, because every time I've had fry, it's been a surprise, and I didn't have brine shrimp hatched.
Yeah, yeah.
So copepods were nice to give them something to tide them over until I could get the hatcheries going and everything.
Which
So
species were you using?
it was tiger pods, which I know you said are not good for them because they can hurt them, I guess.
It
But
depends. There's the Arctic variety, and there's what I call the Southern California variety. And the difference is the Southern California actually have hooks
uh-huh.
Mm.
or like claw-like appendages that they
Hmm.
use to hold on to rocks, whereas the Arctic rendition, which are apparently very similar, don't have that.
Interesting. I don't know which ones they are. They come from Reef Nutrition, and they're the only pods that they sell here at my pet store.
Oh, that makes
Mm.
well. That's because they're big and they're easy to keep, and they're also appeal to
Hmm.
all the reefers too.
Gotcha. So yeah,
But
that's what I had. I found a thing online on how to raise them. I was feeding them frozen phyto paste. I'd freeze it
Yeah.
into cubes and then mix it in water and distribute it. And yeah, it was actually pretty easy. I had some in the house and some just outside in buckets and doing their own thing, and it
Uh,
worked. They did.
yeah.
They did.
that's exactly why I can't do it. Is because number one, Cheryl made the point. The copepods that will take, frozen phytoplankton, or you don't have to grow the phyto too. That's a big pain. But even when you eliminate growing the phyto and just have to grow the pods, it's like I've already got tanks and buckets everywhere already.
It's
So
everywhere.
no more buckets. No more
Yep.
buckets. But so Dan, I
Well,
mean, really, they are actually more nutritious. I mean, like, okay, here's the question: Is just a copepod versus an artemia that's been enriched, or is that the same? Do we have any idea the difference in nutrition?
Well, we know that in the wild they're primarily going to feed on what's available in the water column, and most of your copepods are going to be more balanced in terms of your fatty acids.
Mhm.
Your artemia is going to be very high in protein, and it's going to be missing, the DHA component of the fatty acid profile for the most part, or very low. It'll have plenty of EPA, but EPA is not. The animals can't convert EPA up to DHA. So Artemia rapidly catabolizes the DHA component of any enrichment you're giving them back down to EPA. So typically, when you're feeding Artemia, you're going to have high protein content. Um, you're going to have some of the fatty acids, but it's not going to be complete or proper.
Mm,
So Artemia, copepod knops are probably a better food if you can only get enough of them.
Yeah.
right.
The problem for most people is acquiring enough. I mean, when I was doing the pelagic species, if you saw how much plankton I collected and
Mm,
how much I went through, it would take me. I went to a seminar here locally from put on by the University of Florida on live feeds, and I looked at their copepod tank that they use for feeding fish. It was a 1,000-gallon round tub,
holy moly.
Yeah.
and that enabled them to get 1 million copepods per day.
Yeah.
Now, they also had an algae room that would make you drool that was
Mm,
used to feed that tank.
oh yeah. Yep.
And it was a massive undertaking. And what they spend a massive amount of man hours and resources to do, I could do in 45 minutes with my plankton nets.
Right. Nice. It's always nice when you're able to live near the ocean and also you know what you're doing. Like I couldn't collect the right stuff. I wouldn't know what to do. But I thought you were going to say something. Uh, so Cheryl, but with the combs, are they pelagic fry?
Yes.
Okay, so they have to have the copepods at first, so you're making them
Yeah.
anyways.
In fact, it's not unusual for them not to really hitch for up to 3 weeks.
Right. So
That,
when will they start eating other things? When can you move forward from copepods? At what age?
You can't usually. It's going to vary depending on the male, how big they are when he delivers them. Uh, Normally, by about the time they start hitching, they're usually ready to also start taking live, or
Gotcha.
sorry, brine shrimp.
we
Gotcha.
And
we when we were doing the combs, we did both 2 weeks on copepods or plankton, and then we also did experimented with starting off with Artemia, and we found that we could go 3 days of plankton and then go to Artemia successfully.
Oh wow.
Um, so the fry are really not that small compared to other pelagic species,
right,
but they still do better with copepods as the initial food.
yeah, reed eye and engines are definitely smaller than Combs fry.
Oh, okay. And are you breeding them currently or no, Cheryl?
Uh, I've got, I don't have any engines right now, but I do have the Combs that I'm hoping will do something soon. But
That's
they're
that's what I was
lazy.
asking. I was asking whether the combs were breeding. How long have you had them?
Uh, 2 years now.
Oh wow.
Has it been that long? I guess it has.
I guess it has. Yeah. It's well, maybe it would be this summer. I think it'd be 2 years. I'd have to look it up. I don't know. I just love watching them.
Well, I mean, it's just cool, period, even if they don't breed, but I hope that they do. Will you, what's your plan if they do? Obviously, you just love raising them, but will you sell them?
Uh, if I were to sell them, it would be very quietly done
So not,
to
don't announce it
somebody
here.
I know
Right.
that I know would know how to take care of them.
Makes sense. Do they have, what's the size of their batches usually? Or do
It,
pelagic seahorses have larger batches, is the question.
I'm trying to think back. I think about 150 to 200. I think was about average.
Oh, that's not big. Dan, why do,
It's not like engines.
No,
right.
I would have said it roughly 200 or so for a batch.
Yeah.
So why do certain species have more fry?
I think it has a lot to do with how many survive in the wild.
Ah, so
You
like,
know, the
yeah.
nature has a way of programming the animals to perpetuate the species. So, if you've got, like, take for example, Barbary. Barbary have very small batches, but we have a high success rate with them,
Hmm.
although they're very, very slow growing.
Gotcha. And Ray just commented in the, sorry if I cut you off, but Ray just commented, in your opinion, the Tigger pods all jump on the seahorses and freak them out?
I
Right?
only bought one bottle of them, but that was enough of the experience. Uh, Never again. Like they're a decent sized copepod compared to most of the ones that I was growing on my own, and I was looking for something bigger. But uh, when they were sitting there jumping up on them, even the full size adults.
Yeah.
Oh,
I,
wow.
I don't know if you guys remember Adelaide Rhodes, who used to work with copepods. In fact, she was here for a while locally studying. She showed me pictures of fry with the ticker pods attached to them.
Yeah.
Mm,
Huh.
like a tick. Ah! Sorry, Dan missed that. I had to
Like
take it. I
Kelly's
had my
Kelly's tick.
I had my first experience with a real live tick today. I don't like them. Anyways,
Watch for a red spot around the tick bite.
oh, don't say that to me. No, I watched every video in the book. It was my daughter, not me.
You know how to get rid of ticks, don't you?
Don't tell
You
me.
burn them off. You get a really hot. You light a match, you get it really hot, and then you touch them, and that way you don't have to worry about leaving the head in under the skin.
Oh,
And have a fire
stop.
extinguisher in case a kid goes up in smoke.
Right. My son tried to set. My son was like, "Oh no, listen. You take the candle, you get the candle wax, you put a circle around it, all this stuff." I was like, I went and looked online. I'm 99.99% sure I did it right. I think we're good. It was just hard for me because I hate
I
bugs so
just
much.
dumped
Oh God.
peroxide on them.
Really?
Well, Lyme's disease has become very prevalent now, so it's worth
Oh.
watching the site to see if you get the typical ring around it.
Well, I will. And what I used before and after was alcohol. Ray, what's up with peroxide? That makes them detach?
I don't know. I don't know why I tried it, but like I haven't needed it lately because with COVID I can't go to the cottage.
Right.
Cottage is way up north, and so we've got lots of problems up there with black flies and ticks and stuff like that.
Mm,
But why I tried it, I have no idea. I couldn't tell you at this time because it's been so many years ago when I did that, and
but
it's
it
not
worked.
something. From what I recall at the time, it did. And like I only had to do it maybe 3, 4 times over, say, over 10 years.
Wow.
It's not something. It's not something. Getting ticks, you don't get it all the time,
No.
especially when you're only vacationing up there in the summer.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
But
I've never been anywhere that ticks would even be. I'm not an outdoorsy kind of person.
I had more
Just
problems with the poison ivy.
right. And
Well,
yeah,
Lyme disease caught early is very easily treatable. It's when it's festered for a long period of time that it becomes a big problem.
look, I'm getting all itchy now, you guys. Because, but no. So Dan, what you're saying is just watch, and if the red ring appears, that's when I worry.
Well, then she should be seen and tested, and they'll usually put it on antibiotics to take care of the bacteria that they put in.
Well, nobody calls CPS on me, but I hate bugs so much that after I
Yeah.
followed the instructions and I believe I removed it properly, it looked funny, so I went ahead and like literally yanked her skin. Oh, it was terrible. Now I'm not. It's not that bad. No, everybody's like, oh my god, no.
Well, my daughter had it. She got bit on the eyelid by a tick, and she ended up testing positive, and we ended up treating her, and then that was the end of it. You know, but Abby's first Lyme disease patient was completely paralyzed,
Oh
and
my god.
it took him a long time with a lot of treatment to, and that was in South Carolina, and he had been up north visiting when when he had gotten it. But the disease itself has spread down the coast quite a bit.
So
Originally,
go
it
ahead.
was up in Connecticut, and it's has spread, to a much larger range now.
When
Well,
I lived in
boo.
Virginia, we used to have the horses out in the pastures all the time, and it was a daily thing to go through and check each, you know, 10, 12 horses for ticks because they would get covered out in the pastures in Virginia. And obviously we didn't want them down there. And we got real good at not only removing them, but getting rid of them.
Right.
We had to.
Yep.
And
And that.
we would literally go home and check each other's hair and everything else after we got done. Make
Please
sure
don't
we had
say hair. Oh my God, I've got too much hair. Don't say it. I'm gonna freak out now. But
I
literally,
had teas for my dogs. They're these
You know
little metal things. You slide them under the tick and just pop them off.
oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Really well.
Yeah, you would have
Speaking,
them there where you're at too.
Yeah,
speaking,
we have them too, deer ticks.
Now
Yeah.
you guys, now I'm gonna start itching my head. Go ahead, Dan.
speaking of treatments, going back to the antibiotics, I couldn't
Sorry,
talk
yes.
while I was in the chamber. But the triple sulfa, I do it just like the Furon 2, and I know the directions on both the Furon 2 and the triple sulfa. Most medications that come out, they usually say dose like every 3 days for 2 or 3 times. Um, but what we did at Seahorse.org, the moderators all got together, and I think CJ was probably the lead on it. Um, we came to the conclusion that 10 days was the appropriate thing to make sure that we didn't have antibiotic resistant bacteria.
Right.
And instead of following the directions on the label, we felt that changing the water daily was better. So our standard recommendation was to dose the initial dose per the label on the first dose. Each day do a 50% water change and then do half the dose to replace what we took out. So both the triple sulfa and the Furon 2, you should do both that way.
Gotcha.
And when you look at using Furon 2 and the triple sulfa, the other two drugs that you can mix into the equation that work synergistically, I wouldn't do more than two at a time. But the other would be Neoplex, which is neomycin, and Canaplex, which is kanamycin.
I love
Um,
Canaplex. Go ahead, sorry.
I prefer
Well,
Canaplex over the Neoplex simply because in the beginning years we did a lot of treatment with neomycin and triple sulfa combined, and the problem I had was I cured the bacterial issue, but end up losing the seahorses a few months later to renal issues.
okay, yeah.
Um,
And neomycin is very hard on the renal system, particularly at the doses that we were dosing. And when you use triple sulfa, neomycin, Canaplex, and Furon 2, when you mix those two of those together, they create a synergistic effect. And when I say that, it it's not that it's twice as good having two antibiotics. It's like a multiplication factor. The two work synergistically to affect the bacteria in different ways they attack it. That's why a lot of times in a hospital setting, you'll see them do a cocktail of antibiotics because they're trying to hit it from different angles and
right.
find the right combination and something that actually hits the bacteria. Treating bacteria is much harder today than it was when antibiotics first came out
Oh,
because
yeah.
of the widespread use. And every day in the feed store, I got people walk in looking to buy antibiotics for their dogs or cats because they don't want to go to the vet.
Right.
It's they have no clue what they're doing, and they just come in and asking for an antibiotic. Um,
Yeah.
Hey, I have a
sucks.
question for you, Dan. On this, is one of the problems with the Holly Seahorse is a tail issue. And I know we've talked about it in the past of going as far as 21 days with antibiotic therapy for tails. Um, eh, I'm looking for your input on this.
Are you using any topicals, or is it strictly oral, water based?
I started out, I was using Alloderm on it twice
Okay.
a day.
Now, how big is a seahorse?
He's
It's an adult.
about 8 inches, I'd say.
Okay. Do you have access to adult artemia?
No.
Yeah. My favorite way of treating this particular scenario is to use artemia, gut load it, and feed that to them because the oral route is superior to water bath.
Gotcha. I could
Um,
raise some. I have eggs, but it would take a while to get them big.
yeah.
Wait, what would you use? Do you mean put the antibiotic in the Artemia? Feed the antibiotic? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would basically, in my enrichment, I would add the antibiotics to it and then feed them the artemia. So you've essentially gut loaded the artemia with antibiotics.
Are you just going with the Puran 2 or the triple sulfa and the Puran 2?
Well,
I,
the Furan
it,
2, I've got right now, and the Furan 2, you actually do add a packet every day
Right.
in the directions. The way
should
it
be.
works on my box, you add a packet the first day,
Yep.
you add a packet the second day,
Yep.
the third day you do a 25% water change and add a packet. The fourth day you do a 25% water change and add a packet, and then it starts all over on the fifth day. So you do the 10 days.
But
Now,
what
on
I'm
my
trying to,
Sulfaplex, what it said is to add 2 to 3 little spoons of it every 3 days. So should I put some of that in then every day? Or,
yes,
The standard way that we did it was we dosed the initial dose.
uh-huh.
Each day we did a 50% water change, and then we added 50% of the initial dose each time after the water change. So in this scenario, we would do one packet to start, do a 50% water change on day 2, add a half packet back, and day 3, day 4, et cetera, the same way. The triple sulfo, we would do the initial recommended dose to start. Then we would do half that dose each day after the water change. Now, what I have often found is that many of the antibiotics that you get over the counter for fish, their dosing is lower than what you'll find in Noga's book, the fish disease book.
Mhm.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially if you combine the two, you're going to have a much better effect. In fact, if you read Basler, he's going to suggest that you do lower the dose when you mix antibiotics.
But
okay,
you're saying that the method that you used was to mix them and do 50% water change a day and repack it halfway.
That's what we've been doing for 18 years since I've been doing it.
Yeah.
And to a very large extent, we've had a very high degree of success helping people, when they were treating, when they followed the directions that we gave, much higher than people that tried to follow the directions on the label and do it on their own.
So
okay,
in Holly's, oh,
But
go
that
ahead,
means
sure.
that I'll be adding less of the furan too then, right?
Yeah, well,
yeah,
you have a little bit of leeway room with the Furon too, but
Uh-huh.
again, I like to use the least amount of medication necessary to achieve the job.
um, okay. Now, question on this: Are you? I know because I have used Furan too, and gut loaded uh, brine shrimp with it. Are you also saying to gut load with the triple sulfur, or just the
Yes,
Furan
yes,
two?
I do both.
You're doing both.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, it's a good idea that when you're doing that is to have a enrichment in there because the artemia will take up, according to the research, they'll take up more of the drug when you have the fats in the water,
Mm,
um, and they're consuming that. They'll ingest more of it.
makes sense. That does make sense. So in Holly's case, since how many days have you been doing the Furan too? Furon, however you say it.
And I'm on day 5 right now.
Well,
So should
generally
she just
speaking,
start what your plan is? Go ahead.
well, with bath therapy, you got to figure it's going to be 48, 72 hours before it can kick in.
Mm,
It takes time for them to ingest enough. I mean, the way they're ingesting it primarily is by regulating their osmosis, their osmotic balance by drinking water. Uh, there's some of it may pass through the gills, but most of it is from them drinking the water in the tank.
mhm. So should she now switch, or should she continue as
Go
she has been?
systemic.
If it was me, I would do as I suggested,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
using both of them, I think she's going to have a higher chance of success, assuming that we're dealing with a bacterial issue.
Right, but I guess my biggest question is if the 10 days is what's recommended and she's already done 5 of Furon 2 and she now starts to add the Neoplex daily and the Furon 2 daily as you suggested, does she need to continue the Neoplex for the final 5 days?
Yeah, she should continue that, and you know, the odds are from description, at least from what I could gather, um, it looks like we're going to need to go that route for a cure anyway. Our normal suggestion is that even if the seahorse appears cured or the bacterial infection is gone, to go ahead and follow the full 10 days. In this case, I suspect she may end up having to go a little bit longer than 10 days. It's not uncommon with tail issues to go longer.
Gotcha.
Well,
And
and I
how?
don't
Go ahead.
have Neoplex. What I have is Sulfaplex. What
I'm
is Neo?
sorry. You're right. I was saying the wrong
Sulf,
thing.
yeah,
Sulfaplex?
sulfoplex is basically I mean, when you're looking at, I don't know, remember without going back and looking at the label, but I believe it's a mix of different sulfa drugs.
It
You
is.
know, we used to have triple sulfa before
Yep.
they came out with Neoplex, Canoplex, and the rest of the plexes. We used to buy the drugs, you know, straight up as kanamycin, um, nifurpurinol, or nitrofurazone, you know, triple sulfa, etc.
Gotcha. Well,
So
Heather,
now the
good.
rest of the treatment, every day I should change half of the water, add half a packet of the Furan 2, and a half of the normal dose of the Sulfaplex. Is
That's
that
correct.
right?
That is correct.
Okay, perfect.
And
And for
go ahead.
those listening, it should always be in a hospital tank, and
Hmm.
it should
Yeah.
always be clean water because you don't want anything to interfere with the antibiotics.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. And Heather asked, would it help Sandy if Holly did topical plus the antibiotics? But you are, right?
No, I haven't been doing the Aliderm anymore since he's been in the hospital.
Would that be beneficial, Dan, to do that also?
Well, if we had an open wound, I would say yes. Um, and I'm very big on using that particular product, but you know, I suspect what's going on. It's not only just the tail; it's moved further up too. Correct?
It appeared to move further up. One of the reasons that we changed everything was because all of a sudden the upper torso above where the tail uh, damage was turned black. He lost his lined markings and he lost his silver spots, which told me, and he started to swell. Now she started him on the new protocol, and that, quite frankly, looks 100% better today. You can
Good.
see his lines again. You can see his silver spots coming back, but he was definitely starting to swell. And
Yeah.
it,
So what
And that's what happened first time around. See, I treated him for that before around the beginning of the year, right around New Year's. And it all started, he had like a white pimple like thing on his tail.
Hmm.
And then within a couple of days, his whole body blew up like a balloon. He was floating. He had trouble hitching. And so I put him in the Furan 2 and Diamox for the last few days of the treatment. And he was fine again after that until now. And I kind of just started seeing it go down in the same fashion as before. So before he was getting all swollen up, I popped him into the Furan 2, is what happened.
Well, from the description, I got to think that it's internal. So, given
Yeah,
that, you know, the alloderm is primarily a topical,
yeah.
and although it does permeate in some, it's not going to permeate in far enough to do what we want it to do.
Yeah, it
Um,
did help his tail, but when I started noticing the other symptoms, I'm like, I think he's got internal bacteria
yeah,
yeah.
as well. So,
Now, where it gets tricky with this is that, you know, if you have a reoccurring issue,
hmm
um,
No good.
antibiotics that we use generally work well for your Vibrio species and probably a couple of other species that kick in there. But you can also have a low-lying, I say low-lying, low-level infection with mycobacteria. And quite often that will initially respond to antibiotics or the animal appears to get better, but it doesn't cure it. It doesn't wipe it out. So typically what happens, it's a constant reoccurring event.
and I've
oh,
Um,
been concerned about Michael
yeah,
for that
and
reason.
the only way to know what bacteria you have is to, you know, have a sampling taken, and you know, in this case, the only way to do that's with a necropsy.
Right.
Um, in a commercial setting, what they would do is you would sacrifice the animal. You wouldn't sacrifice. You would ship the animal live with a couple of healthy specimens, and then they would um, put them down and then do the necropsy, so they could look at the whole picture. Um, the, Heather asked the question about
Yep, I was
why
getting
are
ready to ask it. Go ahead.
tail issues so hard to treat and slow to heal, and it's a great question. And according to Pete Jawanja, the tail is very vascular, but my experience, or at least what I've seen, is it seems to be the opposite. And for I almost consider tail rot a stress disease, but it can be caused, from an injury. It can be a bacterial issue. I also believe it can be a secondary issue to urinema, and
Mm,
it really depends upon what the ultimate cause is as to how quickly it responds. What I do know is that when people have contacted me on the help desk with a tail issue, and they've contacted me early on, and we treated it early on, the success rate was very high.
Hmm.
When they would contact me after they had already lost, a good portion of the tail, treatment wasn't so effective in most cases. Now, I
mm,
did have one that I experimented with that had a very severe tail infection. In fact, he lost his entire tail,
mm.
and um, I was successfully treated and got the seahorse to come back around, and I ended up having a seahorse for 2 years with no tail in the tank.
Just crazy.
He couldn't hitch. He'd just sit on the bottom at night. He'd just sit on his
Mm,
stub.
poor
Oh my
guy.
gosh.
But he
I
chased
mean,
the
he
girls
happy.
around incessantly.
Yeah, he was fine.
Well,
I mean, yeah. So
you
wait,
know,
I've got a question. Hang on, I got a question. So if Myco is a possibility very often when we can't figure something else out, isn't Myco dangerous to people too?
Well,
both Vibrio and Myco are.
yeah, most of your diseases that affect fish, we can get as well. Now, how easily we
Jeez.
get it is a different story. But I've known many people in aquaculture who've had mycobacterial infections that had to go on antibiotics for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And the reason that it's considered not curable in fish is not that it can't be cured, it's that the treatment protocol is so long that it's not a worthwhile venture to do. You don't want to be treating an animal for months with antibiotics.
Right. Hey, bye, Salty. Touch base. Sorry, but yeah.
Now, what I would like to see though is some other research using some other adjuncts to this to see, in the homeopathic world, there's other things that we can do to work in conjunction with antibiotics that make me wonder if we could not make it possible to stop mycobacteria in fish.
Really? Wow. I want to see
Okay,
that happen.
I got a
Go ahead.
question for you.
Hmm.
Uh, this particular lesion that's on her seahorse. Did you ever see the pictures from Melissa when her two seahorses got stung? They were way high up on the tail, on the bottom portion.
I don't remember them.
Okay. Well, this one was way up. It's not down near the tip of the tail. It's up in the upper one third of the seahorse's tail, which usually they start a little lower when you get a tail bug, from
Yeah,
my
usually when you have the tail rot, as I call it, it starts at the tip and works up.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, and that is generally very treatable. When it starts further up, then I start thinking more along the lines of a sting or something else,
Hmm.
causing it. And of course, in this case, if you've got swelling in the lower portion of the body, then the infection is probably starting somewhere else and working down to the tail.
Makes sense. That's what I was wondering because it didn't make it's way up there. It's similar in a place to where Lisa's two seahorses got stung by the NEM.
Yeah, and I think that's harder to treat than a typical tail tip.
And what could
Here,
have stung him?
I can show you. Let's see if you can see.
Yep.
Yeah, and see that looks nothing like the tail bubbles I experienced. Mine had little tip, like literally like empty air bubbles. That looks like an injury.
See, given the location of that, that could very well be. Do you have rock in the tank?
I do, yeah. Here, I made
Uh,
it bigger.
Yeah.
Well, notice the red spot too on that
Yep.
photo, Holly.
So,
Did you see that?
yep, this could be
Yeah,
secondary to a scrape or something like that. Eh, we'll
I
never know
have
the
some
exact
sharp
cause, but
live rock in there.
I'm sorry.
I do have some sharp live rock in there,
Yep.
but I also have who knows what because it's live rock. So I do have bristle worms in there. Um, who knows, you know?
Yep.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if something stung him, but it's also, I've had them get scraped before
Yep.
on stuff. So, and it happened right after they were busy courting everybody. So, so it's very likely, he injured himself.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
Heather lost her big George from a scrape on a rock, and I'll tell you, one of my very first seahorses got a scrape on his pouch and ended up with pouch emphysema. So go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
Yeah, unfortunately, we'll never know in this particular case, and it's often the case. We don't have the diagnostic capabilities. We don't, in the case of those that are helping you, you can't examine the animal. So, if you think about how the medical world works, they do the history, they do the examination, and then they do, the diagnostics if warranted or needed to either confirm or rule out something. In this case here, you're using third, fourth party information to try to come up with an answer, and it's difficult,
So should people avoid, like I have rock in the new Seahorse tank, but they're all very rounded pieces. Is all rock kind of dangerous, or should you just avoid sharp edges, or is it not
Well,
that common?
I think it's a low percentage issue. Um, it's a balance of weighing, risk versus reward, and I is most of us will recommend with seahorses is starting off with rock that's not true live rock.
Right.
And I think that minimizes some of the risk. And I think if I had really sharp pieces of rock, I'd probably consider something else in terms of my rock. Um, the other problem that we often see is, depending on how the rock's stacked, where seahorses get trapped in them
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
where pieces of rock fall on them. So, it's I don't want to tell people not to use rock because I think there's too many people that never have a problem with seahorses with rock.
Right.
I just think that you need to be selective in what you're doing.
Stumps are for rock.
What?
What's that?
I said stumps are for rock.
Oh. Well, the only reason I have it in this tank is because I just like the look, but it's rock that was in a previous Seahorse tank that was bleached. No, nothing's alive in there, nothing. And then I recycled, so,
Yeah, I really don't have a
and it's
problem.
rounded.
I've actually put rock in some of my tanks before. When I set up some quasi display tanks, and
I have too. Yeah.
but the difference is that I put a small amount of rock, and then I had mostly sand, and then I had macros. So, the seahorses hung out in the macros, not the rock. What a lot of reefers will do is try to put 45,000 tons in a 10-gallon tank or something like that, and then, the seahorses have nowhere to move, and they naturally hitched all over the place to the rock.
Right.
So,
That's what
it's
somebody asked me recently, what's your aquascape? And I'm like, listen, there's 5 rocks. They're cool shaped, but they're
Yeah.
rounded and they're just spread across the tank. Then I have gorgonians and things for them to hitch upon, fake plants, whatever, macros. But the rock is just basically for me. And there's not much of it. It's not my filtration. But
yeah,
It's like or not Kelly. Ollie, the thing is that location on the tail makes me suspect that it didn't start as a bacterial infection.
Yeah,
mm,
yeah,
yeah.
And because it's high enough up, it's just not a place where I would expect to see. Normally, when I see tail bubbles and tail rot, it's down much low, basically toward the bottom of the tail.
mhm,
And that's basically what Dan was saying.
yeah, yeah.
So
Tail rot's
it could
something
have been
sorry.
an injury.
Tail rot's something I've never had. I've never had it for sure, but my seahorse says I've never experienced it either. And what did you say causes that, Dan? Like tail rot
well,
versus the tail bubbles.
we suspect it can be bacterial. I call it a stress disease because it seems to be more prevalent when there's stress. Um, it can be from ciliates. It can be starting the initial problem followed by a secondary bacterial infection. Um,
That's what
you know,
Cheryl
you,
was saying earlier. Yeah.
as a breeder, when you're raising fry, every so often you'll have a batch of fry that you start seeing some, white tail tips. And as a breeder, you immediately cull them. Um, you don't try to fix it because otherwise you run the risk of losing the entire batch. Um,
Makes sense.
but when it's caught early, I don't want to treat fry, but with larger seahorses caught early, it's usually very successful in terms of treating and fixing.
Well, we all have fingers crossed for Sandy, and Holly's going to keep updating us. And now you've got a new routine to use. Great.
Yeah.
Trying to shorten these down, guys. So, Dan, I did want to ask anything new with you, or do you just jump in to help?
No, I was sitting there in the chamber watching or listening and over the noise, and um, I wanted to jump in on the antibiotics. Um,
Thank you.
I'm glad you did.
Thanks, Dan. That's awesome.
We love you, Dan. Were you going to say
What would
something
we do
else? I
without
don't know.
y'all are one of the 2 or 3 people that do.
Okay, guys. Well, I am, unless you, does anybody have anything else? I know there's always something else, but we'll be back next week. So I am going to go ahead and call it. Heather, thanks for joining us again. Everybody who joined us tonight, thank you. Ray had to jump out, so hopefully everything's cool with him. I'll touch base with him on the side. But happy Wine Wednesday, guys. Everybody say bye.
Bye.
Bye. Kiss Sandy good night for me.
For us all. Cheers, everyone. See you Wednesday with Aquachar.
Cheers.